If you ever you ever want a cool channel, Joe's Bibles. Joe's Bibles, I call him, I'm the other Joe, recently became a pastor of his church, so I moved into the pastor slot, and I picked up this really cool book. It's cloth overboard, American Sermons. It has the ribbon here. It's a very thin ribbon, which I'm not a big fan of thin ribbons. It has the red and white tailbands and headbands. But it's just a really nice, heavy. In fact, it's so heavy, it's going to probably be a little pricey to send. But I wanted to bless Joe with something in honor of him getting the position of pastor. And as a pastor, what happens? You freak out over your sermons. Like if you're like me, you freak out over your sermons every once in a while. And sometimes when you're freaking out over your sermon on, say, like Friday or Saturday, or like Saturday night specifically, before you are going to preach your sermon the next day, what I do to ground myself and to make sure I'm heading in the right direction, rather than freak out, I read sermons. American Sermons, The Pilgrims to Martin Luther King Jr., The Library of America. Okay, this copyright is 1999. Michael Warner selected the contents and wrote the notes for this volume. Don't know who that is. And supported by the Lilly Endowment, which is a great endowment for the ongoing development of ministers and ministry. 17th century sermons, like John Conn and John Winthrop, Thomas Hooker. All right. Let's see. And somebody wrote in these in pen, unfortunately. Con Mather. 18th century, Jonathan Edwards, Divine and Supernatural Light. Jonathan Edwards, Sinners in the Hands of the Angry God. So you have like your classics in here. You also have some that you may not hear about. And you also have people who aren't necessarily evangelical or Christian. Ralph Waldo Emerson and Joseph Smith, delivered April 7th, 1844. So not necessarily a Christian book, but mostly Christian. Henry Ward Beecher is a good one. Dwight Moody, On Being Born Again. Look at that. This is in the 19th century. We may have to read that before sending it off to Joe. And then the 20th century has some pretty big names. Harry Emerson Fosdick, Shall the Fundamentalists Win? Billy Sunday. Paul Tillich is a good one. Reinhold Niebuhr. These are big names. Martin Luther King Jr. Transformed Nonconformist, one of the best sermons I've ever read in my life, and I usually read it like once a year. Abraham Joshua Heschel is a Hebrew rabbi and scholar. Did a lot of work on the prophets. And then MLK, one of the last sermons I've been to, the Mountaintop Sermon. So this is a really cool book. Very nice. It's too bad it's highlighted in, but that's what you get when you go to the used bookstore. Beautiful writing. Just a nice, handsome edition. Very heavy. Like I said, cloth overbound gives it an air of quality to it. And just wonderful collection of sermons. So, most of these sermons I do have in other books. So when I saw it and I just couldn't pass it up, and it was only $1. I mean, again, you just can't beat something for $1. I thought, well, I figured I'll send this to him. If he wants to pass it along, that's fine. If he wants to keep it. But Joe, I recommend you keep this in your end table on those Saturday nights if you're freaking out. Just read a sermon, ground yourself, and it'll get your mind off things, and just remember why you're doing what you do, brother. And for all of you who are out there in ministry, keep doing what you're doing. I know it's a hard time, with inflation and with all of the crazy politics, but keep your eyes on the Lord, keep focused, and for resources along the way, like and subscribe, and thank you for joining me.